and welcome here to the Cozy Chair. I'm so glad that you're here. If you are a little one looking for a story, go to a different movie because this one is all for the parents. Today I'm going to be teaching you parents some techniques and some strategies for teaching your kids how to read. I love reading with my own kids, and I've also had chances to help other kids start to learn how to read, and I just wanted to share with you a few strategies that I found. Today we're going to go through everything from a beginning, kind of like a baby, all the way to fluency, how to increase fluency, the kind of steps along the way. And then in my next video, if you want to hear about great read-alouds, I have a whole bunch. This is just a small stack that I'm going to talk about. But people are asking me all the time about my favorite read-alongs. So I'm gonna talk to you about those chapter books and what ages I feel like they're good for. So make sure to come back if your kids are not learning how to read. They already read, but you want some direction on some fun books. So let's get started with your young kids. Okay, before your kids know letters or sounds, read to them anyway. I love this book. This is the Read Aloud Handbook. And this talks about all sorts of things, fun books to read and why we should read and things like that. But this says the single most important thing activity for building the knowledge required for eventual success in reading is reading aloud to children. Don't underestimate the power of you reading to your kids. If you don't have time, turn on the Cozy Chair. But even if you do turn on the Cozy Chair, try to take time to read with them because it can be really fun. For instance, I always start with Mother Goose. I love Mother Goose. Even when I don't have the book open, I'm often singing the words and they begin to memorize them. You know, Itsy Bitsy Spider and Baa Baa Black Sheep, they're all in here, as well as Jack Sprat and The Crooked Man. Well, I love this edition by Scott Gustafson because every page is a different nursery rhyme, and the illustrations are just fabulous. The reason I like every page to be different is because kids at this age get bored very fast. You have to be able to move the page fast. A lot of times they will turn the page before you are even done singing, and that's okay. Just finish out the song, and they're just looking at the pictures. That's totally fine. So before they're reading or learning letters, sing songs. Tell them the nursery rhymes. They will memorize them, and then as they get older and you start using your finger to read along the words, they're going to pick up on a lot of words just because you've already sang them or read them to them many times. For instance, at night when I would sing them a song like Baa Baa Black Sheep, have you any wool? Then I would stop and they would say the rest of the phrase there. A lot of fun. If you don't have this book, find this book at the library. It's really, really great. Okay, once they're getting a little bit older and they want to learn letters, I start with books that have big letters on them, like this one. I'll say, oh, this is the letter O. Can you make that with your mouth? And they'll go, oh, and then they'll make it with their O, with their mouth. I'll say, how many O's can you find? And they'll find it, and then we'll read. So what I start to do is I just start to introduce letters one at a time or two at a time. Maybe I'll say, oh, this is a T. It's like tapping. It's a T. And then when they see the T, they go tapping. It's a T. So I just have little things that they do, but I'm surprised. By the time they get to where I start using flashcards, I'll talk about that in a minute, they know a lot of letters. Like the letter S, super fun to say, to move your hand, to trace, and to sound like a snake. So I use that book quite a bit. Now, what I also do is I always have them point to the titles. I will say, today we're going to read Art and Max. It's going to be so fun. And I'll say, what's this? And as they get better, they'll start saying ARTMAX. I don't bother with symbols. They're a little too confusing at that stage. So I start with books that have big letters, and we say those. If they're little letters, I don't spend a lot of time on them recognizing them. Here are a few of my favorite ones that I like them to point out. See how big those letters are? The size of the letter actually is really important. Kids have a hard time seeing small font. So before I read the book, I'll say, oh my goodness, look at this duck. Can you find the word duck? And they will figure out if D, then they'll figure out that this is duck. Even if they don't know the U sound or the C or the K sound, they can hear the beginning letter. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can, just before you start your books, say, oh, this is duck on a tractor, and I'm going to tell you the letters. D, U, and you point with their finger. And sometimes you can say, okay, how many O's are there? And see if they can pick up on this O. See if they can pick up on this O. Just kind of work on that with them. Okay, now this is really important. The two that I showed you have capital letters. I always begin with capital letters. I don't intermix them in the beginning. Once they have all the capital letters, then I'll move to lowercase letters. And I'll say, oh, did you know that this is an E? It's just like the other E, but it's lowercase. Or I'll say it's a baby E, something like that. So these, I move to books like this. That doesn't mean that I didn't read this book before. It means that I just didn't point out the letters before. This is just a chance for them to point and say the letters before you read. And they'll really enjoy that activity before you get started. Okay, then after they got uppercase and lowercase down, then I start finding fun books like this one. I love this book, Tickle Monster. It's a ton of fun. But do you see on here how they've got uppercase and lowercase mixed? That's a really fun thing for them to start differentiating. Okay, so now we've talked about how I use books and I use the letters on the books, but I also want to talk to you about flashcards. I am a big fan of flashcards because I think they're fun. There's a lot of games that you can play. Now, just like I talked about with the books, I always start with the capital letters. The reason is they will see capitals more. I think they're a little easier for them to recognize. And then when they know all the capital letters, then I start adding in the lowercase letters. Now, here's the thing. I don't give them a whole stack at once. Way overwhelming. I start with maybe 5. Sometimes, depending on my child, I did 3 at a time. And we just did those 3, and I would say, what letter is this? What does it say? What is a word that starts with that letter? And we would play that. And then once they got those 3 down really well, I would add in another letter or another 2 letters. And then we would work on that stack. Do you see what I'm saying? Till they know all the letters. Then it's really fun to play games with uppercase letter and lowercase letter. I would do things like this. I would put 4, maybe up to 6 letters, uppercase letters on one side, 6 lowercase letters on the other side. And I would say big Y, and they would find the big Y. And then I would say little y. They would find them. Then I would say something like this. Big Y, little y. What begins with Y? And they can come up with their own answer, or they can flip it over and tell you one of these. Or I'll say, big brother, little brother, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay? So they're hearing the name of the letter. They're hearing the sound of the letter. You can play it many different ways. It's a lot of fun to use flashcards. Sometimes if your kid doesn't like pulling out the flashcards, if it's feeling too much like a chore, I'll even take little M&Ms and I'll put them on the uppercase one. If they find the lowercase one that matches and they're right, they get to eat the M&M. Something small like that. I don't use sugar a whole bunch, but I do like it in small doses to make it fun. So I am a big fan of flashcards. They can learn quite a bit and they can be fun. Sometimes I'll time them, see how fast, and I'll write down their time, and they have 3 chances the next couple days to beat that time. And then we go on and things like that. If you have any questions about how to use your flashcards or game ideas, let me know. I have more ideas. So just a few things. Until kids are reading, there are some really fabulous wordless books. This is one of my favorite. It's The Lion and the Mouse. It tells Aesop's fable without using any words. It's just really, really great. I mean, it does use roar, but the whole book is just really good for them to look through. This is really good for them to talk to you about what they're seeing and what they're understanding. I use wordless books just to hear how they interpret the story, and it's hard for me to not tell them what the story's about, to try and get them to figure it out. So that's kind of fun. Also, interactive books can be really fun during this stage before they're reading, because you're reading to them, but they are doing the action. For instance, this one says, try taking some of that yellow and smudging on the red. So they move their hands from here to here. A lot of interaction. What's happening here is they're seeing cause and effect, but they're also moving with the book. These books are really Hervé Tullet. His books are really fun for kids before they're reading a whole lot. So those are a few ideas. This is what I start to do once they know all the flashcards, they know all the letters. I get a cookie sheet and I get little magnetic letters. This package of magnetic letters I found on Amazon. It's like $9 or something, really cheap. And I just grab a cookie sheet and I say, okay, we know the S is here and it says S, and A says A, and P says P, so they know all the sounds. But now what's happening is they need to learn how to blend. That's the next thing. They need to learn how to blend sounds together to make a word. So I'll pick three letters like this and we'll say a, t. That's really good for them to be able to differentiate the sounds, because on the Dibbles test when they're little, they will ask them, what is the beginning sound or the first sound? What is the last sound? So it's really good when they can say at. That's really good. But we don't want them reading like that all the time. So this is an exercise that I do. I take the M and I'm going to hit it into the A. When I hit the A, then the two sounds match. They blend together. So this is what it looks like. Mat. I keep the sound going until I hit the last letter. What that helps them do, and then you can get them closer, mat, mat. This just helps them move the letters around, try and keep the sound going as long as until it hits the next letter. So then I'll do that for all of these, same with the C, same with the P, or sometimes I'll say, if this says at, we know this says at, we're going to run these letters into it. We're going to bump into it. So he says at. Or we know this says what? Oh yeah, it says at. So they keep telling you. Okay, what if I take P and he crashes into it? Pat. P-at. Okay. Or I can say S. Sat. Okay, so those are just some of the ways that I teach them to blend and physically be moving something. A lot of times I have my kids use their hands because that solidifies in their brain, or moving this helps solidify that in their brain too. So this is kind of a fun exercise that you can do with your kids to begin to blend the sounds and the letters together into words. Okay, once your kids are taking the sounds and they are blending them into words, then it's time for them to start reading short books that are like phonic books. So I recommend that you find a good set of phonics books that you like. And I have liked many different kind of phonic readers, but it's not until after they are out of phonics that you can go to these types of books. Now this might fool you sometimes. It says reading level 1. So you think, oh, my child can read and can blend sounds together, therefore they're ready for books number 1. That's not true. When you look inside these books, you'll see things in these books like croak or sounds, quarter, noises. These are all pretty big words. The only reason I show you that is because sometimes parents come to me and they say they can't read level 1 books. That's totally normal. It will be until they're a little bit older until they can sound out some of these harder level books. So be careful about the phonics books that you find and spend a lot of time with them, learning those and gaining their confidence. And encourage them to find books that they like, even if they can't read it. That's the fun of finding wordless books or interactive books, is that they're starting to love the process of reading. Not necessarily the words, not the work, but the process of getting from the beginning to the end and seeing the pictures and things like that. Now that your kids know letters and sounds and they're starting to read smaller words and they're building on that skill, they're getting better, it's really important to work on fluency. Now, I didn't realize that until one of my readers was starting to lose a lot of confidence because she wasn't very fluent. She was just breaking down words too slow. And so that summer, in hopes to help her, I went to Teachers Pay Teachers. It's a great website. And I found this fabulous program. It is called Sight Words Superstars, and it was done by Jennifer Bates. And this is what it looks like, okay? She took the Fry's 1000 list, which is the 1,000 most commonly used words. So you can see the, of, and, to, in. All those words that they need to know that are going to be the most frequent in anything that they read. And she broke these into lists of 100. So she's got 100, sorry, that one my kids wrote on, 200, 300, 400, all the way up to level 6. So she has them up to 6 levels. So in the course of the program, they'll learn 600 words. Now what I would do is I would take the list, the first list, and she also sells the flashcards to go with them. You just print them off. It's really simple. So this is the first 100, the yellow one, and this is list 2. So that would be this second list. And I would put the flashcards out on the table, take them all out, and then put maybe an M&M on each one or an M&M on a couple of them. And as they learn the word and practice the word, they got to eat the M&M. And as they got faster and faster, then I'd put them together and I'd run through them like flashcards. Once they got confident and they felt like, oh, I know those words, they would say, okay, it's time to time you. So we would start right here if we were doing list 1, and I would time them. If they could read this whole thing in under a minute, then they got a sticker. Now this is, I'm telling you, I love this program. Then every color had its own star. So on the yellow star, she wrote her name and then put the sticker on the one until she had all 5 stickers on. Then at the end, when she was done with that, Jennifer had also added a Sight Words Superstar certificate for every single level. So this was like a really awesome program. In one summer, my daughter went through all 6 levels and earned all 6 certificates. I think it was a really great thing for her to see us put these up in our home office so that she felt like not only was she making that achievement, but the whole family was seeing her work on that. So I really suggest doing something with Fluency. Find this program or another one and really work, because as you are working with them on their fluency, their confidence will really grow. And then as they start entering into chapter books, then they'll feel like they can do it. I'm going to talk just for a second on a few chapter books. These are beginning chapter books. These aren't chapter books like what I'm going to talk about in the next video. They are what I go to once my kids are done. They're done with phonics. They're bored with phonics. There's no storyline. Then I move to these kind of books. I am a big fan of the Magic Tree House. My kids have read a lot of these. I don't read them in order because generally they're spread all over the house or all over the neighborhood. So I like them because they teach about certain places or certain animals. They also teach historical events like the Titanic. So obviously they're still fiction, but they're learning about what happened that night that the Titanic sank. So I also like Dinosaur Cove books for my sons that didn't like Jack and Annie, that got tired. I got Dinosaur Cove. Nancy Drew, these ones can be really fun if your kids like mysteries. Also, A to Z mysteries are really fun if your kids are interested in not knowing an answer and wanting to find the answer. Then the A to Z mysteries are also very simple. Flat Stanleys can be really fun. These are a little simpler. All of these books are are similar. All of these books are similar because the chapters are short and the font is pretty big. These are beginning readers. These are beginning chapter books. So then Cam Jansen is another one. Then I like the I Survived books, but not until they have kind of graduated from Magic Tree House or Dinosaur Cove. These ones are shorter chapters and easier to understand. These are a little more complex and a little bit longer chapters. So just keep those in mind. Now, once they're done with those, this level, then I kind of go to the mid-range. Okay, the mid-range chapter books are books like Judy Moody or Nancy Clancy. I am a huge fan of Nancy Clancy books because she uses big words. She loves to be fancy, so in being fancy, she uses fancy words. So for instance, let me just read you. This is the very first part of chapter 1. That's really a camera? Lionel asked. Nancy could see the skeptical look on his face. Skeptical was a new favorite word of hers. It meant a person doubting whether something was true. So do you see what's happening there? Is she uses fancy words and then she defines the word right after. Nancy Clancy are awesome for expanding vocabulary. So then I also like Ivy and Bean. My daughter loved Ivy and Bean, and these got her reading so much more. After she had done the Magic Tree House, she was kind of getting a little bit bored because they're very similar. And then she got into the Ivy and Bean books and really enjoyed them. I really like that. Now for my Also, Sarah Plain and Tall, a little bit older, but short and simple. I like this one for girls, short and simple chapter book, and Stone Fox for boys. So those are two there. And then I love the Ralph books. I love The Mouse and the Motorcycle. I couldn't find my copy because I think I've given it to somebody. But these are really fun as your kids are graduating from these simpler readers and heading into bigger chapters. Now, I hope that you enjoyed that. I really hope that if you have questions that you'll email me at thecozychairclub@gmail.com. If there's something that I did not cover and you want me to cover in another video, please email me. Or if there's something that I talked about and didn't give enough detail, also please email me and I can clarify or explain anything that you need me to explain. Please come back if your kids are already good readers and you just want book suggestions. Please come back because I'm going to do another short video all on read alouds that I have read with my kids. Thanks so much for coming. I'd love to hear what you think. Drop me a note at thecozychairclub@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you next time.